He was in my face under that brutal Miami sun red, sweating drunk on power and cheap whiskey, yelling, "Get out, you hear me? You do not belong in this building." While I stood there in my own rooftop pool in the penthouse I actually lived in with 100 rich folks pretending not to stare and a dozen phones quietly recording everything. And I remember thinking, not for the first time in my life, that I was being judged and humiliated in public for no other reason than the color of my skin and the fact that I dared to act like I belonged there. His name was Lieutenant Ryan Hale, Miami PD, late 30s, going on bitter 60 uniform, already wrinkled at noon breath, smelling like cigarettes and something stronger, and he talked to me like I was trash on the sidewalk instead of the woman who had just helped shut down 3 drug houses across town the week before. He had no idea who I really was. Because here is the thing, he and my snitching neighbor Ty did not know. That black woman in the bikini by the infinity pool, the one they thought they could label a prostitute, a trespasser, whatever fit their little story, she was actually an undercover FBI agent in the middle of a major operation, and they were about to turn my worst humiliation into their own worst mistake. 3 days earlier, I had moved into that luxury penthouse under a fake identity. Nice car, carefully curated wardrobe, fake backstory about selling a tech startup in New York. All of it just to get close to a cartel boss named Pablo Elfa Ramirez, who liked to treat that rooftop pool like his personal office. And my job was to watch record and quietly pull his network apart thread by thread without anyone suspecting a thing. You know what I mean? Blend in, smile, never cause a scene. I remember standing at the window the first night in Unit 14B looking down at the pool while Ramirez talked to his guys like he owned the building, feeling that mix of focus and low-key anger that comes with this kind of work. You are surrounded by money and privilege, but just beneath it you can feel the fear and exploitation and violence that paid for all that glass and marble. I told myself, like I always do, stay disciplined, play the rich single neighbor, keep your head down, no one can know what you are really here for. On the third morning, I finish a quick briefing call with my surveillance team, grab my sunglasses with the tiny camera hidden in the frame and step into the hallway already in that undercover mindset, calm on the outside, clocking every detail on the inside. And there he is, Ty, my 18-year-old neighbor, pressed up against the wall with this bright bouquet of red roses like he was auditioning to be the building's resident rom-com lead, grinning like I was something he ordered. "Coffee," he says, pushing the flowers toward me. "I promise you have never met anyone like me," voice just a little too confident, a little too used to women laughing and saying yes. I looked at him through the dark lenses, saw the clinginess, the entitlement, the way he already assumed I should be flattered, and I just said, "I am busy and I am not interested in childish chasing," short and sharp like slicing a rope before it tangles you. His smile froze, then cracked, his jaw twitched, he looked down like he had been slapped, then snapped his head back up and said, "Who do you think you are, a black woman acting all high and mighty?" And I did what black women have had to do 1,000 times. I ignored it. I fixed my glasses, walked past him, and kept moving because if we reacted to every insult, we would never get anything else done. What I did not see was what he did once I turned the corner. I headed to the pool, slid into character, slow, confident walk, pretending to just be another wealthy woman looking for more sun, while my eyes tracked Ramirez near the far chaise lounge. White shirt glowing in the Miami light, talking quietly with 2 of his men as something small and white passed between them, and I tapped my sunglasses, murmuring to the team in my earpiece. "Ramirez is moving, I am recording," while the rest of the rooftop stayed wrapped up in its expensive little bubble. Up on an upper floor, Ty watched me through his window, not just hurt but simmering, staring at me, at Ramirez, at the whole scene he was not really part of. And instead of sitting with that rejection like an adult, he pulled out his phone, opened his anger like a toolbox, and dialed 911. "Miami Police," the dispatcher said, and he slipped into this fake, shaky tone. "I am reporting an emergency. There is a suspicious dark-skinned intruder wandering around the penthouse. I think she is a prostitute and a threat to security," as if my existence was a danger and his wounded ego was public safety. He hung up, smiled to himself, and had no idea he had just lit a fuse he could not put out. A few blocks away, that report landed on Lieutenant Ryan Hale's desk, and he laughed this dry, ugly sound. "A dark-skinned intruder in a rich neighborhood, probably more trash," he said to his partner, waving off the suggestion of backup like he was swatting a fly. And before walking out, he looked at himself in the little locker room mirror, eyes bloodshot from midday drinking, muttered, "Let me teach these black folks how to behave," like he was the main character in some twisted lesson plan. While he rode the elevator up to my floor, the building security team got the call, Nervous voices on the radio saying police were on their way for an emergency. The guards trading uneasy looks because they were used to handling noise complaints, not possibly armed intruders. Me, I was still watching Ramirez tracing his movements, pretending to be relaxed, totally unaware that a different hunt had already started with my name on it. The first thing I felt was the silence tighten that way, conversations flatten when something is off. Then I heard the heavy footsteps and that barked voice slice through the music. "Everyone move! I am here to arrest a criminal." And the crowd parted, revealing this man who was supposed to protect people stomping across the tile like he owned the air. He stopped in front of me, looked me up and down, enjoying the attention, and shouted, "You filthy black woman, stay still, hands up," loud enough for the whole rooftop and half of downtown to hear. I said, keeping my voice steady, "You have the wrong person. My name is Jasmine Carter, Unit 14B, I live here." But he just sneered, laughed in my face, and said, "I have heard hundreds of lies from cheap trash like you. You look like a hooker who wandered into the wrong place." While people in silk robes whispered, "My God, he is drunk," and started filming. His young partner tried to speak up. "Sir, she looks legal. Maybe we should..." And Hale spun on him, screamed, "Shut up," so hard it cracked across the pool and froze everyone in place. When he turned back to me, that was the moment it stopped being just racism and started being something darker. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave fingerprints, yanked me closer, and his other hand drifted across my chest like he thought his badge was a permission slip. "Soft for a black woman, not too bad," he muttered. And you should have heard the gasp that went around that rooftop like the whole deck sucked in a breath at once. "Let go," I told him, voice low, cold. "This is harassment." And he grinned, squeezed tighter, leaned in so close I could smell the alcohol, and said, "Be good, sweetheart. Cooperate and I will go easy on you." Behind him, an elderly woman in a Hermes robe stepped forward and said, "Stop, she is a resident." A man who was the building's lawyer added, "You are committing a serious offense," and Hale just laughed in their faces. "Shut up or come to the station with her," because he was so used to people backing down. My wrist was throbbing. My chest burned from the insult more than the touch. And in that second, something inside me shifted from endurance to decision, from take it to enough. I lowered my shoulders just a little, not in surrender but in calculation, felt my training settle over my muscles like armor, all those hours in FBI gyms turning into a single choice. When he reached for me again, still completely convinced I was prey, I rotated my wrist, broke his grip with a small, precise move he never saw coming, and then I let my fist go clean hook from the hip. No wasted motion, all that humiliation channeled into one strike. The sound when I hit him was like a bat cracking against a tree. His jaw snapped sideways. His eyes rolled, and this man who thought nothing could touch him literally left. The ground flew backward and crashed into the pool, sending a wall of water over half the deck, soaking his own partner and half the spectators. People screamed, some in shock, some in delight. Phones shot even higher. Someone yelled, "Oh my God, she just knocked out a cop." And in the middle of the chaos, I walked to the edge of the pool, pulled out my badge, held it up so there was no missing it, and said, clear and steady, "Federal Agent Jasmine Carter, FBI, you just assaulted a federal officer in the middle of an active investigation." The energy flipped in an instant. Gasps turned into curses at him. "Not me," people shouted. "Keep recording, record everything." The building's lawyer stepped in front of me like a shield and demanded the younger cop call his commander. The elderly woman glared down at Hale, thrashing in the water, and said, "Beautifully done, dear," like she had been waiting her whole life to see a man like that knock down a peg. Hale dragged himself to the edge, coughing blood mixing with pool water, and when he finally got his breath back, he looked up at me, eyes wide, and stammered, I did not know. I thought you were trash." And yeah, that actually came out of his mouth. I looked him dead in the eye and said quietly, "You thought that because of my skin color," and for once even he did not have a comeback. That rooftop video hit social media like a lightning strike, and by evening I was watching clips of myself on screens in a temporary FBI command center a few blocks away, different angles, shaky hands, people narrating live, "Yo, this black queen just knocked out a racist cop and she is FBI." You could watch the story evolve in real time. Intruder at a rich pool, turning into officer under investigation. News headlines popping up on another monitor saying, "Miami PD lieutenant accused of harassment and racism." And honestly, while the internet was exploding, I was just sitting there replaying the footage for something entirely different. On one clip taken just moments before Hale stepped off that elevator, I saw Ty standing by the pool railing, his phone in his hand, his eyes on me. and in the fuzzy background his hand met the hand of one of Ramirez's guys. A tiny white packet changing hands so fast most people would miss it. But I didn't. My stomach dropped because it meant the whole time I was being used as a distraction, their racism had become a smokescreen for a drug deal. We cracked Ty's phone and found exactly what I expected. Messages from Ramirez's crew, things like, "Distract the target transaction complete," and a new one that made the whole room go quiet. "Shipment lands tomorrow night, prepare the accounts." So that night I put on a different mask, literally and figuratively traded the poolside look for a black dress, and a calm, confident smile, walked into a club called Azure Lounge where Ty liked to drink and brag, and let him think he was picking me up, not the other way around. Under the neon blue light over the thump of bass, I slid onto the stool next to him and said, "I heard you know interesting people, and you should have seen his chest puff up." "Yeah, I know some people, the boss, the one who really runs things," he said, loving the sound of his own importance. "Ramirez," he eventually whispered, leaning closer. "There is a big shipment coming if you want in. I have to test you first, come with me if you dare." And I just smiled like I was playing along, even though the hair on the back of my neck was already standing up. He led me to an old warehouse near the docks. Place smelled like rust, and old secrets told me this was how you walk through fear to get into Ramirez's world. And as soon as we were deep enough inside, the act dropped. Two armed guys stepped out, gun pressed to my back, a black hood in one of their hands, and one of them snapped, "Get on your knees, witch, the boss wants to see you later." Fear showed up for sure, but right behind it came something colder. Anger that once again men were using my body, my race, my presence as a prop in their power play. They tried to pull the hood over my head and I moved. One twist, one elbow, one hard shove, and suddenly it was them on the ground groaning with their weapons skittering across the concrete. I yanked one of them upright by his collar and said, "Where is Ramirez, and do not waste my time?" And he spilled it fast. Clifftop, oceanfront villa, private back tunnel, big cartel meeting planned that night, plus a gas-based kill switch built into the vents. We barely made it out before the automatic lockdown sealed the place shut behind us. Alarms screaming, steel doors slamming down like the building itself was swallowing its secrets. Within hours, the joint FBI and DEA task force was rolling hard toward that villa, our boat cutting through dark water while a helicopter hovered high overhead. And I remember standing at the bow, wind in my face, salt on my lips, thinking how wild it was that a young guy's bruised ego had almost derailed months of careful undercover work, and at the same time had accidentally given us a shot at bringing down the entire network. We slipped in through a rusted maintenance entrance by the rocks stacked up at the basement door, and on my signal the breaching charge went off with a dull thump, door flying in my voice shouting, "FBI, hands in the air," into a house full of men who were not used to being told no. Upstairs in a conference room, Ramirez stood at the head of a long table talking about how this shipment would own Miami in a year, international partners around him in expensive suits, and suddenly they were all on their feet, yelling, pulling guns, blaming each other for a setup. And somewhere on the second floor, Ty, who was supposed to be just a jealous neighbor, was staring at the security cameras, seeing our team moving in and slamming his palm onto a big red button the cartel had installed for emergencies. I heard the alarm first, that high-pitched wail that makes your chest tighten, then the hiss, soft but unmistakable, as white gas began to pour from the vents, crawling down the walls like fog with bad intentions. "Masks now!" I yelled, pulling mine up, eyes burning, ears ringing with gunshots and coughing, and the sound of people who thought they were untouchable realizing the house was trying to kill them. I pushed through that haze to the control room, the place where all the camera feeds and security systems came together, because I knew in my gut Ty would be there hoping to fix what he started, or at least save himself. I found him hunched over the monitors, tears streaking through the gas on his face gun, shaking in his hand. And when he saw me, he pointed it right at my chest and screamed, "Do not come closer. I am not afraid to shoot a woman." I took one slow step forward, then another, feeling the burn in my lungs, and said, "You are shaking more than a rabbit, Ty. Put the gun down." That line hit him harder than I expected. His face twisted with this ugly mix of shame and rage, and he yelled, "You humiliated me in front of everyone. A black woman has no right to reject me. You think you are better than me, just throwing all that poison right out in the open. That is why you chose a murderer over me saying no." I asked him, "That is what my no did to you." And he snapped, "At least Ramirez respects white men." Like that sentence made any sense as his world collapsed around him. He fired wild. I knocked the gun away, twisted him into the table, and cuffed him. And as he finally broke down, he choked out, "I just wanted respect. I did everything they asked. I am not useless." And I told him quietly, "Respect does not come from fear, Ty. It comes from who you are when no one is watching, and you failed that test a long time ago." While my team dragged him out, I saw movement through the gas cloud outside the glass doors. Ramirez sprinting across his private sand like a shadow jumping onto a waiting yacht that roared to life, trying to disappear into the black ocean, and I knew this was it, last chance. I grabbed a tack boat, gunned it after him. Helicopter floodlight blasting the water into silver and black stripes. Bullets kicking up spray around me as he leaned over the rail and fired down screaming, "Die, you FBI witch!" because apparently even at the end, he could not let go of his bitterness. Then I saw it. A small black USB in his hand glinting under the spotlight, and I knew in my bones that little piece of plastic held the names, accounts, payoffs, the whole rotten skeleton of his empire, and before I could even fully process it, he threw it into the sea. I did not think I just moved, cut the engine, dove straight off the front of my boat into water that felt like a punch, the helicopter beam warping above me as I went down lungs, already burning fingers, sweeping through the dark, looking for something that might as well have been a pebble on the moon. Somewhere above, I heard a muffled crack through the water as the sniper took his shot, hitting Ramirez, and then another sound, dull and heavy, that my brain recognized as a grenade hitting the deck. But by then I had brushed something small solid, closing my hand around that USB like it was a lifeline. When the explosion went off, it felt like the whole ocean convulsed, heat and shock and pressure slamming into me, spinning me around, and for a second, I truly did not know if I would make it back up. But stubbornness is its own kind of life jacket, you know what I mean? And somehow I broke the surface, gasping, holding that drive up as the yacht burned and sank behind me like the last angry scream of a dying kingdom. They pulled me onto a response boat, wrapped a blanket around me, tried to pry the drive from my clenched fingers, and I croaked out, "Evidence is intact," before my body finally admitted how tired it was. Ramirez was gone, blown up by his own panic, his partners scattered and arrested and back on land, footage of Hale being walked out in handcuffs, and Ty, slumped in an orange jumpsuit, started making the rounds side by side with the pool punch video, people arguing in comments about race power, respect, all of it blending into this big, messy conversation we probably should have been having years ago. The Bureau promoted me, called me a hero, put my name in press releases, said I helped expose a racist cop and dismantle one of the biggest drug networks on the coast. And that sounds nice in a headline, but there is always more to it when you are the one who lived it. A few days before Ty's trial, I sat across from him in an interrogation room, just the two of us, the fluorescent light making everything look harsher than it already was. He looked smaller without his designer clothes, hair a mess, eyes red, hands cuffed to the table. And after a long silence, he finally asked, voice cracking, "Why did you not like me? I was nice to you." I had to laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how familiar that line is for women who say no. "You were never really nice," I said. "You treated me like jewelry you thought you deserved, and when I did not shine the way you wanted, you tried to break me to prove you were valuable." He slammed his cuffed hands against the metal tears, spilling over. "I just wanted respect." And I told him as gently as I could for someone who almost got me killed. My rejection did not create the monster Ty you chose to become him. And yeah, you ruined your life, you just finally noticed. He cried quietly, shoulders shaking, and I left him there because sometimes the only justice you can give a person like that is the mirror. A little while later, the assistant director called me into a conference room, told me the city owed me, slid a new badge across the table, promoted me to special agent, thanked me for what I did for Miami, and outside the glass walls I could see reporters on the sidewalk pointing cameras at the building where Hale used to swagger in like he owned the place. Now his name showed up in headlines next to words like trial, civil rights violations, abuse of authority, and racist misconduct. The police department announced internal investigations, reforms, new trainings, all the things institutions promise when they get caught looking the other way. And social media crowned me a symbol for a minute, people stitching my story with their own, "This happened to my cousin, this happened to me. I wish I had punched back too." The truth is, the best part of all this was not the promotion or the headlines. It was smaller. It was watching people who had always assumed the cop was automatically right pause for once and say, "Hold up, maybe she was the one telling the truth." It was seeing that old woman at the pool become a little internet hero for stepping in. It was knowing every rookie officer who watches that training tape will see what happens when you let your prejudice run the show. But it would be a lie to tell you it ended neatly. One quiet afternoon, I sat by a different pool on the other side of town. No yachts, no penthouses, just kids playing, and the sound of someone's old radio drifting over the water. And for the first time in weeks, I let my shoulders drop, told myself, today is peaceful, and believed it for about 5 minutes. Then my phone buzzed with an unknown number. No name, just a message that said, "We know who you are and Miami is only the beginning," and an attached file labeled Phase 2. And I just stared at it, not scared exactly, just very, very clear on one thing. You do not blow up the empire of a man like Ramirez without waking up his enemies, and justice is never a one-and-done story. So let me throw this back to you since you have stayed with me this long. If you had been at that pool the day Hale grabbed me, would you have stepped in, or would you have kept your head down and pretended not to see? Have you ever watched someone get harassed or disrespected because of their race or their accent or their clothes and told yourself it was not your business? What do you think is worse, the people who abuse their authority or the people who stand there quietly while they do it? Tell me in the comments what you would have done. Tell me if you think I went too far or not far enough. Tell me your own story if you have one, because these things do not change with one punch or one case. They change when enough of us stop pretending we do not see it. Hit like, share this if it made you feel anything at all, and subscribe if you want more stories that dig into what justice and prejudice really look like when the cameras are still rolling after the headline moment ends.